Well, hello, everybody, and a big hey now to everyone. I'm here with Kim Tran, and we're going to talk about HEX today. Hello, Kim. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I remember, so my first image of you was a X post, and you had the tablet, from the marketing of Pulse and then I saw you in a couple of the different streams that came out. And then Tam, I guess Tam had a conversation with you, maybe in one of her spaces,
Yeah,
and
we had a
that's
couple
led,
of discussions.
yeah, and that's led to this. We can talk a little bit more about HEX and get that information out.
Yes, I feel like I have a good grasp of things now, and I hear a lot about staking hex and excited to learn more.
So what do you? So what's your impression so far?
About hex or the
Well, yeah, I mean, crypto
specifically?
HEX. You can start wherever you like, but I mean, like overall, what's your impression of what's going on over here?
Well, I think that it is the future of our financial system. I don't know exactly where it will fit in, but I also believe that as an asset, it is a great investment in terms of what it promises and in terms of also the ideology of the mechanisms that produce that kind of result. So it's also a fun experiment in some ways, but I think that it's exciting to see that people are building things like this and the promises of how this can help um, many people.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I feel much the same way. That should not be a surprise if I'm talking about HEX all the time. That I feel that way. Um, when I look at a lot of times with crypto these days, when I'm talking to people about it, I've given up on trying to convince them that crypto is a good idea. Because you kind of get in this do loop of, well, what gives it value? Well, crypto's not money. What gives it value, right? And this whole argument, most of us have already gotten past the idea that, yeah, we believe that crypto can be something, right? And then, I mean, we can argue, not you and I, but people can argue forever that crypto is not worth anything. I still have people telling me they don't trust it and yada yada, right? But I was there when the white paper came out, working at my desk, and somebody gave me the white paper, emailed it around. We're all looking at it for Bitcoin. Like, what is this thing? And I was there in 2010 when it launched, and I could have gotten free Bitcoin and didn't do that because, we were afraid to push the button. You can't be careful. Those sites they're gonna do something to you, so don't push the button. And then I was proven right in 2014 when they had the big crash and the hack. But then a funny thing happened. It went up to $200, then it went up to $500, then it went to $1,000. $2,000, and now we're $90,000, and half of Wall Street owns it. So I think we're long past. Hey, crypto's not a thing. I mean, we're way past that. So it's not even. I don't spend a lot of time, talking to people trying to convince them that crypto is a thing any longer.
That's interesting that you call out that point because I feel like I was on the other side of not being sure about crypto until I received that tablet because it requires a lot of research and an understanding of how money works that
Mhm.
you really have to
Mhm.
sit down to take a look at it. And it's easy to dismiss if you're not willing to put that effort in because if you're in the US, right, like it doesn't have as many applications right now, but we've seen that there are many applications for certain countries, right, where they cannot rely on their fiat. So now I feel like because of the institutions and the government giving this attention, it is more of an easy conversation to have with people now. But it is relatively an early innovation, right? when we compare things like, just the currency that we use and gold, like that's been around forever. So like Bitcoin has only been here since 2009. And I think that with this timeline, it's really interesting to also see it converge with AI. And uh, it's a place that we're in right now that is really exciting, but also kind of scary because we're riding the train really fast, and we've never been accelerating at this speed before. So
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Well, it's interesting you say that. I think we haven't seen the jump the shark moment yet, but we're getting close. And the jump the shark moment is the moment that we have some sort of a breakthrough technology merge with IRL, right? And then all of a sudden, instead of the people who are just like all crypto minded or like excited about what's going on, I'm able to do something that affects my digital life outside of crypto. We're close. We're close. When I started, I couldn't go on PayPal and get Bitcoin. I couldn't go on Robinhood and get Bitcoin. I couldn't do a lot of these things. So sometimes in the day, people are like, "Oh, this is never going to get there." But things have been happening for a long time. Um, and then I think you hit on a really important point about why all this matters, and I think it's important for me, anyways, in my thinking. Um, when I'm a little bit older, I didn't go to college until I was in my 30s. I was on my second career. And so I remember going to college. I was already been blue collar, moving into management, working with union, and then went to college and did my macroeconomics. And I was like, "You mean this is all BS? Like the whole financial system's BS, right?" And men with guns, people with guns enforce it, and that's how value is retained. That's what makes the dollar worth everything. That's why I'm paying all these taxes and all this other stuff. And so that was kind of like a moment where I was like, F it. At that point, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm part of the rat race. I can't change, what's going to happen. But that set me up for, a future change of mind when crypto came about. Because, and as I was talking to you, eventually I took responsibility for myself and my finances and went into the fire movement of financial independence, retire early, and that naturally led me to look at some things that exposed me more to Bitcoin and to crypto in general, which led to Richard Hart, which led to Hex, which led to Pulse Chain, and where we are today. And and for those, I know we won't get too much into this, but the cotillion effect of being close to the money printers, we talk about that. People throw that around. But in my fourth career, I actually lived that, working for companies that were close to the money lenders who were doing multi-billion-dollar jobs, and overnight they get funded. Boom, here's $2 million. Well, where did that $2 million come from? It came from a bank. Where did the bank get the money? Got it from the Fed or where else they got their money. It wasn't like it was real before they got it. And then all of a sudden, all these multi-billion-dollar projects, people are getting hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, to do this work. And of course, people work for those companies and they get paid and so on and so forth. And so it's very eye-opening to actually kind of see all that in process and progress, in reality.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a multi-layered analysis, right? Like, I think it's easy to think about money as, hey, I need this to buy, a coffee or groceries. But when you talk about fire and why you might have been motivated to look into structures like that is you want to be comfortable and feel secure in your lifestyle. And that can mean many different things. I remember trying to understand having a financial framework. How do I become responsible? And there are some methods where it's like, hey, like keep track of every single thing and like you really down to the penny. Um, but these methods are kind of meant to enable you to live a life that you love and look forward to and can feel positive about, not to stress you out and make it another, layer of complication. So there are definitely different things that work for different people. So to see HEX and the potential, staking mechanism and how that really pushes forward the idea of committing to what you outline, right, is your plan and sticking towards it unless, something out of your bandwidth happens, which is a very small percentage. It is basically giving your own commitment to your lifestyle in a way, right? So it's
Mhm.
interesting to see now, with systems like this being built, like how does that work for different types of individuals, right? Because we all have different lifestyles.
Different lifestyles, different goals, different time frames. And I think one of the things that comes back to, and without digging into pulse chain really deep, just the idea that pulse chain has been built to be as decentralized as it can be so far, right? To allow people to be decentralized. And there's hopefully not any one organization or person that can control it, right? And then when you move into the whole hex, it's immutable, right? So, and we often call it the truth engine, the code being the truth engine, because you do all the work, as a user. Other users do all of their work. There's no automation. There's no software that does anything other than the smart contract, the 2 or 3 thousand lines of code that's there, and people interact with it. And the idea is that you can use that code to delay gratification, to incentivize staking through locking up tokens and making them more rare through the staking over time, etc.
So can you actually show me how I would get this set up? Because theoretically, we've talked about the mechanisms on Tamtam's spaces before regarding the exchange of hex when you lock it up in the T shares. But what would I actually have to do, right? Like in terms of setting this up and like paying attention to certain dates, like I know like when the actual contract is up, I have to go in and do something. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So the basics of I don't have a visual to show you. Usually I'm the guy with all these charts and stuff, and I'm throwing them up on the screen and visuals, but I don't have a visual for you to show it to you right at the moment. Um, but with Hex, so before we even talk about that, in crypto, in a blockchain, you have different user profiles, right? There are people that are going to be holding, and that's all they do, is buy and hold, right? You've got people that are going to swing trade, maybe on some longer time frames, maybe cycle trading, that type of thing. You have active traders, people who are looking for day-to-day trading. And then you have market makers, people that make the market. They all have different goals and they participate for different reasons. And so for an active blockchain, all that stuff has to exist, right? I mean, for it to be successful, in my opinion, right? All of that has to exist. People have to want to do all of that. So you have an awful lot of different things happening on chain. It's kind of important to understand that, right? And then when people come into, and I don't suggest you don't understand that. I'm just like kind of talking out loud as we get into the hex staking. Um, putting value onto the blockchain. They're looking with some expectation, right? That they're going to somehow get a return on that, whether it's quick and fast or long or whatever happens. That's what they're looking for. And Richard Hart has been pretty upfront about this, and his discussions, his videos, if you ever saw them, is really, other than the very long game of people depositing the value that they don't have to take out, and therefore we accumulate value and value goes up. The way value is transferred is that people come in and they buy high, or higher, and people leave and they sell lower. And so you have that, people buying high and selling low, and that creates a transfer of value from the people who bought low and sell high, right? And in between that, you have, the group of people that are just in the community, in whatever token it is, over a long period of time, delaying gratification with the idea that you will have more users, and more accumulation of those tokens over time to make their value go up, right? So it like sets you up for this kind of like, how does all this stuff work, right? And so from that, we kind of derived this idea that in crypto, at least this is what we can observe, is DCAing over time, buying lower over time, even if it's at a higher or later price, and holding longer results in returns. We call that time in the market versus timing the market. Right. So instead of trying to say, oh, I gotta find the exact bottom and sell the exact top and try to get the difference and do that trading, you find something good that you believe in. HEX is an example that we're using here with a good product market fit. And the idea is you're going to hold that as long as possible, right? To be able to get the appreciation, right? Of the price. And so then the HEX staking that gets layered on top of that is something totally different, right? Or not totally different, but it kind of augments that where, okay, so staking saves you from yourself, number one. Number two, it because you can't unstake, you have to you have to follow the rules, otherwise you may be penalized, right? And then, so you have that part of it, and then you're rewarded for locking it up with a portion of the inflation, right? So, and that portion of inflation allows you to have more tokens over time, where hopefully what you're able to do with that is, even if there is price volatility, that value will be going up faster than if you just held liquid. And so that's kind of the idea of the staking, of why it even exists, right? It's to create this kind of a loop of locked value. And we're seeing something pretty interesting with this now, is that you could say we're entering the second third of the first HEX cycle, and the HEX cycle being Quattro Cinco, or 15 years. So we finished the first 5 years. Now you might consider that to be in the initial distribution and bootstrapping phase. And now we're going into the second 5 year. And you can kind of like draw a line when the OA did all the staking. You probably heard about that we had a big change in the amount of staking that was being done by the OA, and they staked a bunch in March of 2025, which changed the rate of return, the APR, quite significantly, right? And it really changed it. So we've left the initial bootstrapping phase, and now we're into a different phase of where the demographics of people that are going to be interested are way different than in the first 5 years.
Can you explain what exactly happened then, and if there was some explanation for why or the intent of the change?
Sure. Yeah, I don't have the reason that he did what he did, because he never told us, right? Or what the OA did what they did. But up until that point, we had quite a bit of HEX that was liquid, that was owned by the OA, the origin address for HEX, which is like the original minter, let's call it, or whatever. A lot of times we would just call it the founder, but it's not the founder, because we actually don't know who it is, and it's spread across very many wallets. But it's all of the HEX that this entity had that were not regular users. And so we were at something like, for, I think at the time, for like a 15-year stake, the payouts with HEX were running about, I think it was about 23%, 25%. So the APR per year for staking was about that if you were doing a Quattro Cinco stake. The OA came in and stake out a ladder for the next 15 years and put a whole bunch of HEX, all of the HEX out over this 15 years, but put a whole bunch of it out 15 years. And so now what that's done is it's normalized, to some extent, it's normalized the amount of T shares, the amount of HEX that's staked throughout those 15 years. And so after all that talking, what it did is it significantly reduced individual users' future payouts, right? So where I was getting 25% if I did a 15-year stake, now I'm getting like 4 or 5%. So it cut it way down. Now he didn't give us a reason why, but there are a couple of reasons why that a lot of us have guessed about. One, less inflation out to users, it means increased scarcity. And so in just simple supply dynamics, supply and demand, less HEX on the market in individual hands means less on the market that can be sold, which means higher price appreciation under the same circumstances within the market. So one is to drive scarcity. So that was one big one. And then also incorporated in that, which also is tied to supply, by being the main player that benefits from HEX, you also benefit from all of the penalties that might be accrued, all of the benefits that might be accrued, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of manage the ecosystem, because you're a much bigger player in that ecosystem. Though now that the OA is deployed, there's not a whole lot they can do, right? So we're pretty much like in wait mode now. But so you asked a very specific question: reduce the or increase scarcity is the number one reason.
And that's only until the 15th year, right? That.
So far, yeah. It could be more later. I mean, we're going to wait and see because the first one comes up in March. What does the OA do? We'll watch. I have no idea. They may restake, but they may not, which creates a whole nother group of things. If they don't restake, it creates one set of circumstances for the future, and if they do restake, another set of circumstances.
So for someone that wants to stake HEX, do they have to pay attention to these details, or is it like a set it and forget it thing?
I think to some extent they should do a little bit of research to understand, but I don't think these details matter a whole lot. I mean, everybody's going to come at it from a different angle and a different depth. I think that the fact that it's immutable, it's been running for 5 years, over 5 years, the fact that you can go look right now and say, okay, if I'm going to do a 1 year stake, I can count on, 1.25 points or 1.5 points, of interest for the year. If I do a 15-year, I can count on 5. Based on the current information, I think that's pretty important, right? Because if I was coming in new, I want to know what I'm going to make, right? And that has also been a differential, right? It's been a big difference because right now, HEX is very competitive with treasuries, right around the same numbers, right? Very competitive with CDs, right around the same numbers, for what you get if you go lock up. But the difference is with crypto, you have exposure to volatility and potential price appreciation, right? The US dollar is not going to go up. It might go up in some other range, but my CD isn't going to double in value because of something's happened with the market. If I'm getting 3%, I'm getting 3%. But in crypto, you can come back and see that, oh, wait a minute, what I put into this stake that's like a CD, it just went up 10x.
So I think Tam Tam also mentioned about doing the math of owning a certain number of T shares and what that type of income would look like. Could you kind of break that down?
Yeah, she was suggesting looking at 100 t-shirts and what you get today, right? And then what it might look like in 15 years. And this is yeah, we're making up numbers, right? But so today, if somebody has 100 t-shirts and they're getting paid about 1.5 hex per t-shirt, right? And so if I multiply that out, and I should be able to do this in my head and say it's 150, but I'm doing it on the calculator, so it's 150. All right, so about 150 hex per day. Now, at current values, hex is less than a penny, right? That's not very much, right? I mean, it doesn't appear to be very much. But again, this is the whole idea of this price appreciation, right? So today, perhaps that is worth. I think the last price I saw, I'll just use 005. I think it was 004 though for hex. So that's about 75 cents per day. So these are the kind of numbers that people are talking in the chat about falling asleep. But these are the kind of numbers that'll put you to sleep, right? Because it's like these are little tiny numbers, but if you multiply that out by a full year, that's about $270 a year. And so people will be like, wow, do I really even care to try to get 100 t-shares now to do that? But here's the thing is, when and if hex goes up 100x, which is kind of something that I expect is going to happen either between now and the end of the cycle or the next cycle, that's $27,000 a year in USD value if the price of hex went up by 100, which would bring it back to something like all-time highs. So it's always a matter of what kind of people are interested in this approach. I think if people are interested in things like passive income and they understand numbers and they're more of a number person, they may like this a lot more because you can do the math on it and be like, okay, I get it. Hex is half a penny right now. I can buy a whole bunch of units. It has history of being at 50 cents. So you can reasonably forecast that it might be 50 cents again in the future, right? And so from that, you could actually put together a staking ladder that takes that into account. Now, I just gave you the numbers according to what we're at today. Well, over 15 years, by the time you got to the end, I believe that the payout will be double. Because we see as stakes end and people get out, the number of t-shirts get lower, and so the payout goes up. And so my guess would be by 15 years, it won't be 1.5 hex per day. It'll be over 3 hex per day, and that's a very conservative call, like low. It'll be over 3, which is double. And so now we're talking about that 100. That 100 t-shares earning you many more hex during that period, and now at 100x type of a price, it's $60,000 US. In that kind of range. And now that starts to become very significant money for something that you can get set up and in place today, very cheap. Because of course we haven't experienced or re-experienced that 100x.
I feel like when you mentioned all the different crypto, I guess, personas of why someone would be getting into a specific area, I think it's interesting to think about, right? Because what type of person would want to stake hex versus just hold specific coins or, do whatever
Oh
they
yeah,
want to do with their portfolio?
yeah.
I think
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm listening. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's just interesting to think about, right? Because there's overhead and things to consider, right? When overall the idea is that you're still riding on that for the most part, the volatility, right? Potential of the asset.
Yeah, and that's when I mentioned that before, these different type of users that are out there, you need that volatility, right? It needs to exist. And that's why it's almost like each one of those roles is a different business model, and each one of them you put a different hat on, and you have to understand that you're wearing your trader hat and what the rules are for that. And if you're market making, you have to wear your market maker hat and the rules for that. And, staking, the same thing, because they have different rules. And you can even see it in the chats and stuff. We talk, people, if you're looking, everything I'm talking about, if you're looking for 1,000x and before Christmas, that's not what I'm talking about. So if that's what you're looking for, this is BS. Nobody's interested in that. I'm talking about very long time frame stuff built on an immutable contract on a blockchain that I think is going to be in place in 15 years, right? And so
That's a long
yeah,
time horizon too.
yeah,
Thinking about today and
it's
what's
incredibly
happening
long,
month to
right?
month, right? That's
Right.
crazy to think 15 years right now.
Yeah, well, and it's really hard to have the conversation with people. Well, it is for me. I mean, I have it anyways, but I mean, hard in that um, mostly the people, so I mentioned before how the value gets transferred in crypto. Mostly the people that are doing the complaining are the ones that are transferring the money, right? Because they're not going to wait. They did their $100. It didn't go 1,000x and went down to $5. They're out. But they still left $100 behind, and took their $5 minus gas. Or they got really excited about it, and they went into something else. First they lost 50%, then they go into something else, lose 50%, went into something else, lose 50%. They still left their $100 behind, right? And so a lot of those folks aren't really interested, or not really interested in, hey, let's talk about a budget. Let's put all these numbers down on paper. You didn't, where's my 1,000x? That's I get that a lot from people. And then when we're talking about we talk about hex a lot. Of course, I'm talking about hex a lot. There are other people that talk about hex, but there's not a lot of shiny objects. And the whole hex staking thing, some people would say it's dead, right? I mean, it's over, but it's not over. It's just that perhaps it's not going to be the main story with hex. And so we have this kind of like closed garden now, where okay, I'm talking about it, and I know there's 1,000 other people out there that are also doing it, but maybe the other 10,000, 20,000 people don't care, and that's okay, right? It's okay if they want to hold liquid and speculate on the price going up. That's fine. I need that because I know that the system needs it, you know. And so it's just having that kind of abundance mentality. People are free to do what they want. It's DeFi, right? But for me, I come back to the idea is to have as many units as possible, right? That I can earn on for an income, and then get the exposure to the price appreciation.
So what do you think? Well, which persona are you in terms of the
I'm wearing multiple hats, but my
yeah.
primary hat is the hex staker. And so to answer your question about the staking, if for somebody who knew was coming in, without going into significant detail, if they get into the at least as deep as saying, okay, I'd like to set up a ladder, I'd probably have a couple key questions for them. But I would simply say, hey, listen, set up a ladder for whatever you want to set up that comes out every January, mid-January, you know, every January, end your stake. Every January, decide what you're going to do next. Because what you can do is set up a kind of like a cash flow, but instead it's a hex flow. And you get X amount of hex in January 2026, and then you can decide. Okay, I want to roll it over. I don't want to roll it over. I want to scrape some. Maybe something new is happening. Maybe we're expecting there's going to be a blow off top, and you're going to wait a few months. But then when you're ready, you roll it over to the next run 15 years out, and then you continue to do that, over time. That's one technique. So every year you get the stake out, and what that does, it gives you kind of an idea to kind of test the waters. We think we know when the tops will be, but we really don't. Right? It's really
So
hard.
so do you actually have to go in and end the stake? Like you, is it like a button
You do,
or what
you do,
happens?
you do. And so there's a couple of different front ends where you can do staking now, and basically, very simplified version is you have to have hex to start with, right? So you put you say how much you want to stake, and then you say for how long, how many days, and from the days you can calculate what the end date is. You pay the little bit of gas to create the stake. It takes your hex, and at least in the interim, it burns it and takes it all. It makes it so it doesn't exist. And then inside, the contract, it says, okay, this address now has this many T shares, which is part of that little calculation. And based on the number of shares, you get paid additional hex. So it knows how much you put in, right? It knows how many T shares you have. And then as the system progresses, it calculates how much you get per day. And so when you push the button to come out and to end it, it just goes and adds all that up, adds it to your original principal, subtracts any penalty if there's a penalty, and gives you a return. And so that's the end of the stake. And so you do have to remember to follow the rules. Go. Once you start a stake, go end it on time, not early and not late, but on time. There's some caveats to that. Some people will end early. Maybe they have a good reason for it, but that's up to them. We call that emergency end staking. There are some people that may not even do anything with their stakes afterwards for whatever reason. Some people believe it's a benevolent act just to let them bleed out and be penalized over time, and they won't even come back and get them. So you see that as well. But yeah, it's you're making an agreement with the contract with your stake that you're staking your hex for X number of days, and in return you get paid those rates, and the rules of the contract apply.
I feel like there's a big opportunity to like have a layer over this that's like a video game where you come back in,
100%.
you press your button and you get your coins
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah. It pushes the button for you. Well, there's a couple of ecosystems where that can happen. Well, I guess not ecosystems. I guess I won't talk about the Hedron one, but in Hedron we have the what we call hex staking instances. HSIs, and HSIs are stakes where they're basically bundled up into an address, and now they can be moved if you want to move them, but they can also be delegated. And so there's a couple protocols out there, like Actuator is one of them. Well, when you're in the Actuator system and you actually delegate your stake out, um, and which in that system you're minting an additional token to go access your liquidity. They do actually have a button. They have a button that says go ahead and click here, and you can end that stake when the time comes. And it's not your stake because it's been delegated. So I'll give you an example. I put the stake in. All right, the time comes up and it's time to be ended, but I'm not around for whatever reason. Doesn't matter why I'm not around, right? And you go there and you see that it hasn't ended. You say, I'm going to end it. And it says right next to it, oh, if you end it, you're going to get paid this little bonus for ending it because you got to pay the gas. And so essentially it should be higher than the gas. So then you end it for me because I delegate it. So that's a system like, it's not quite what you said, but
Hmm.
people moving in that direction. The Communis app, which is another ecosystem, within the hex area, is a reward token, for staking, native staking hex. They run a little gadget where when it's time to end, if I didn't end my stake, they can go do a different feature and just kind of pause the stake and put it on good accounting. And so you could say, well, hey, I haven't seen Crispy around. You don't know my address, but whatever. You haven't seen this guy around. It's not ended. Well, after a certain number of days, you can go to their website, and you can't end it for me, but you can good account it, and you'll get paid a reward for doing it, a bounty for doing it. So yeah, I could see those types of things being incorporated even further into another layer, and that that might be on the path to additional utility that creates more adoption. You know.
Yeah, I mean that is exciting to me because it's kind of like a type of interaction, right? And that can be extrapolated to I envision video games, right? Because in a
Hmm.
way it already has to be some sort of community, right? If it's multiplayer and there are already some sort of dynamics that include some sort of in-game currency, um, and like point dynamics, right? And if people are already invested into these communities and using it, right? If it was backed by some sort of crypto, it just makes that kind of exchange a lot easier, right?
Hmm.
Because when people talk about certain games, right, that have a big community, like those points or whatever their in-game app currency is valuable in a way
Oh
that
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
equivalent.
I mean, how many of us have pushed the button, and paid a few dollars for the extra credits so you can do something? Now, I'm not the right person to talk to about all the gaming that's taking place on Pulse Chain, but there have been times in the past where there have been games that accept hex, um, and there will probably be games in the future that will accept hex, and there are games right now that are being played that are based on Pulse and some other tokens. So I could see all that coming together at some point, right? And the Tiago from Solid Hex had come out, and um, he had launched the X game recently, and that's a crash game. The crash game is just it's a game of luck, but it's a regular online casino game. But now you can play that on base, you can play it on Pulse Chain, you can play it on BSC. And so why wouldn't some people start moving in that direction more? So it all has to do with how that infrastructure gets supported and all the rest.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's been pretty interesting. And then I'm not going to go blow your mind, but as we go a little bit further into this over time, right? I'm expecting there to be things like we already have a bond trading layer, that where people are trading hex like their bonds now, and that's been pretty active this last year. It was launched in October of 24. It's really begun to get some traction, and I think that is a whole nother thing. Like, most of us probably have never traded bonds in our lives. We may not be interested in it, but there are people in the world that's what they do, right? And so maybe they're going to be really interested in it. I don't know. Maybe that's a way for things to take off. So it's getting pretty fun, to watch what's happening.
Yeah, I've heard of trading bonds, but I don't think I've actually done it directly. I guess indirectly through indexes probably, but
Oh yeah, yeah. I think most of us have probably had that exposure just because the index is doing the trading, and they're
Mhm.
saying, okay, well, this year we're going to take this value and go buy this bond because it's a higher, you're going to get a higher rate of return, right? Um, you know, and I think our big I think the big thing that we are normally trying to do is explain to people how hex is not a certificate of deposit. However, it resembles a certificate of deposit, right? I mean, between
What do
the
you mean by that?
obvious. So besides the obvious that this is crypto, so it's not something that's FDIC insured or whatever like that. It is very much like a CD. I know. I bet you most people have never even had a CD, right? Because they're pretty old now too. I mean, people don't even do this. But for those who may not know, um, if I wanted to save money, I could have gone down and can go down to the bank or credit union or whatever and go in there and say, "Hey, I'd like to get a CD." And they'd say, "Well, how much?" And I'd say $1,000, right? Sound familiar? Like, well, how much hex do you want to do? And then they'd say, "Well, how long are you willing to do it for?" And I would say, "I don't know. Let's do a 5-year CD." And they'd say, "Okay, well, here's our rate. This is what you sign up for, right?" And you'd say, "Okay, I put $1,000 in. I'm gonna earn 3-4%." And they say, "Okay, I'm ready to sign." They said, "Yeah, but you got to read the fine print." You read the fine print, it says, well, if you take it out early, you're not getting all your interest. Okay, right. So I kind of need to stay on there. Typically, they didn't have late fees, but it's very similar in that hex. I go to hex, I say, this is how much, this is how long. Um, the system doesn't tell me exactly what I'm going to get, but I can go look at the data and see what the current rates are of return, and I make the agreement that I'm going to end it on time. So in that way, it's very similar to a certificate of deposit. And then, as we were talking about before, at least in the crypto land, right? You're getting the you're getting exposure to the volatility of the price over time. The fact that it can go up.
It's funny. I don't think I've actually had a CD before. I've seen them, but I feel like the fact that the percentage isn't that much higher to like a savings account, and
It's so low, yeah.
usually
Yeah.
they're like 5, 10, whatever years, that it never felt like a good exchange.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it, right? Most people probably don't and haven't, you know. Um, and so that's kind of my point about the CDs. I mean, they're kind of passe. I mean, the whole, without getting on, onto a some sort of tirade, the whole financial system's changed quite a bit. I'm incentivized to put things in the most riskiest places in TradFi in order to keep up. And so, yeah, there was a time I would get 5% on my, checking account, long time ago, right? 10% on savings and that type of stuff. And that's a long time ago. So, um, so yeah, I'm like you that like most people probably, I haven't done a CD. Why would I even do one? Why would I mean, at this point, I don't, go gamble on the stock market and buy some more Tesla, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, I'd say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but that's kind of how it goes. So you have these things that look like CDs, right? Well, I can do that in Hex. And as we were talking about setting up a ladder, I could set up a ladder um, very uniquely for me, over time. And I gave you the example of doing one, for every year going out 15. And then the rest of it is maintenance of the ladder. A lot of this presumes we're going to have value, and this will continue to go up in value. And so then what I'm looking at is like we were saying, every year extending the ladder out further. And there's some real opportunity for that because most people aren't doing that, right? So again, the closed garden approach, get about 100 people a month. I say people, but 100 wallets a month, doing Quattro Cinco stakes, which are the 15-year stakes. And so it's opened up this big opportunity that most of the long stakes were done in the beginning of Hex in the first 5 years. And we're not getting so much now. And I don't know if the trend continues, but I know that if I continue, my share of the future is greater than, someone who's not participating, obviously. So, but my share of the overall future goes up. I mean, right now there's a point in time where virtually in 2040 that all the t-shirts just disappear. Boop, they're gone because nobody's made enough t-shirts yet to take the place of what the OA's done, and they can't. And the OA hasn't made any more because it can't. And so we have this opportunity, a time where right now I would guess that maybe I'm even a Poseidon. Meaning I own 10% of the t-shirts out Quattro Cinco. That's a possibility. I didn't actually add them up, but I mean, there's not that many. There's only like 10,000 of them. So I'd need 1,000 t-shirts out there. And with Hex being so low, it's like this asymmetrical kind of a bet, to set up those stakes out there now.
Well, it's something interesting to see what will happen.
Yeah, most people, I would say 80% of the comments, not necessarily the sentiment, about 80% of the comments that I get back are very negative. Very negative. Dumb, idiot, scammed, never coming back. And I hear all that. And actually, I appreciate the comments. Thanks, guys. Right. I mean, the stupidest thing ever. Got it. Got it. But those are all the same things that we all say about everything when we don't know the future. Right. So I get that. But I would say the reverse is true about the sentiment that I get from people is about 80% positive. There's always people that are going to talk, right? But the sentiment about HEX is about 80% positive. Now, why can I say that? Because the people who are giving me the sentiment, the people who aren't talking as loud and they're not out on X, like who the hell is talking about their lives on X every single day and engaging with every single thing that's out there, you know? So those are the people I see in here. I don't hear a lot from the others. So I get, so my gauge is about 80-20 in both directions. Negative comments, really about 20% of the people. But the sentiment's probably like 80%. And then I can look at two things that are happening on chain with HEX as far as adoption goes. And one is I haven't seen capitulation. All right. In terms of like people going, I'm out, and they cancel all their stakes, inverts and stake. So that isn't happening. It could happen. It hasn't happened though. So I think those who are in are pretty strong, but at the same time, they are in such a place now with what's happened with the market, the prices going down, they're not restaking. Right. Which is what I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, which just means that if I want to restake, I can restake and take a lot bigger share of a future in that way. Um, so yeah, yeah. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about. So what are you thinking about? I'll try to get out of boring talk now and talk a little bit more excitedly with
No,
more
I mean
energy.
it's good to consider everything, right? Especially at this day and age where you never know what people are thinking, right? And you have to figure out what is best for your situation.
Yeah, yeah, 100% with that. I mean, I joke about it, but I mean, I don't know, man. People get biased on the current situations, and we all think we know. We all think we know, right? But if I really knew the future, why don't I have 10,000 Bitcoin, right? I mean, I literally bought Ethereum at $1.86. Why don't I have 10,000 of those? Right? I mean, so there. I mean, I can go on and on and on, the list. I mean, and so one of the things I've kind of learned is never say never, particularly with crypto. It doesn't mean that everything's going to work out, but never say never, because we could be sitting here at, like Pulse Chain and Hex could be sitting at $1 in 4 years from now. And it'll make perfect sense to us then. But right now, try to sell somebody on the idea this can be $1. Like, show it to me. Show me how this is going to happen. And again, you can look at the chats and see what people are saying. There's too much inflation and nobody cares. They're more interested in Aster. They're more interested in, X, Y, and Z, whatever other token is out there. So I think in the end, what I come back to is I'm looking for at least something that works the way I understand that it works and does it every day. Hex does that every day. Been doing it for almost 6 years. We're coming up on the 6-year anniversary. I know how it works. Right? It's had its distribution phase. It's 1/3 into its first 15-year cycle, and I'm willing to gamble because it is crypto. I'm gambling that hey, I think the future's bright for it. I think it is.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, everything is a risk, and I think just taking the appropriate risk for your tolerance is where you should be.
No, I am. I think that you probably heard the people probably gave you this whole spiel. They probably say, Ken, now remember, Crypto's risky. It's risky. Don't put more in than you're willing to lose, right? And then if you've been around us for any period of time, you also got the now, the best crypto is volatile crypto, right? You have volatility for price to go up, and you might have heard that. And these are the kind of things that I hear, like put more in than you're willing to lose, volatility, time in the market, not time in the market, all that kind of stuff. And then what ends up happening, right? You're like, okay, yeah, I understand all that. I understand all that, Crispy. I'm good. I'll put my money in. Then you watch it go up a little bit, maybe it doubles, right? Well, the very first time it goes down 50%, you're bent out of shape. I mean, I think that's human nature. We're like, oh, this is terrible. The prices went down, right? Well, what part about volatility being in the game, dips being in the game, didn't you understand, right? It's so funny because we're all like, yeah, 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 I understand. Just get me in. Where's my money? Where's where's my where's my 1000x? And then when you're going through these types of periods that we're going through now, which feel terrible, I feel as terrible as everybody else. You're like every other day, it feels like another 50% down, right? It might even be if we measure it. I don't know. But that is crypto and how it works and has worked with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, and anything else that's been successful.
Well, I also think it's something to consider in terms of the time horizon, right? Because the only difference between crypto and stocks is I guess, the magnitude of volatility, right? But unless you have a specific plan on, you know, selling at a certain point, right? Like it's to be expected that it's going to go up and down
Hmm.
uh
Hmm.
throughout time. That's
Oh
just the
yeah.
way the world works. So if you've planned your life out where, you know, you're not necessarily banking on a certain event happening, but just appreciation over time, right? It's it's kind of like I see that crypto as part of the future, right? So I am diversified in some ways, but I don't know what that multiplier is. But there will be some sort of multiplier. Just seeing how the financial system is evolving, right? Do I think crypto is the end all be all? I don't necessarily think that. I think it's definitely like a bridge to the future technology, right? Because currently the legacy system isn't working very well, and there hasn't been I don't know any revolutions, right, of the systems. And I think crypto has been pushing that technological improvement. So
Hmm.
at least I would say 10 years at least, like I foresee crypto being there, especially with AI and the integrations that are possible. So I don't know the future, but I can, attest to that part and seeing that is a risk and a gamble I'm willing to put.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I mean, I don't. I would put Let me go positive. I want exposure, which is why I'm here, because I do think, but I don't know where it's going to come. I don't know where it's going to come from. Again, I'll date myself. I remember listening to reel-to-reel tapes. Most people think that might be quaint. We used to do that, and I've gone through every revision of music, reel-to-reel 8-track cassettes, lived through all that to CDs. Who owns a CD now? I mean, you can't find a car that has them usually, but a player, all the way to the MP3, right? So technology is going to change. Things are going to change. Now, what does that look like in crypto? I don't know yet. I don't know, but I know something's going to happen with it. And maybe it's this ISO stuff that's coming out, these new standards that are going to allow multiple banks and apps and institutions to interchangeably message from chains. I don't know. Is it Richard's ProveX? I don't know. Maybe that's what it's going to be. But I do think we can kind of like imagine the future. That maybe I'll live to see, maybe I won't. Maybe it's going to be too far in the future. But this future of walletless worlds. Like I don't know. Some people might know what I refer to when I say a Star Trek world, right? Where there is no money. Well, where's their money? I mean, why do I even need money, right? Maybe there's a world where nothing gets done. I mean, in that, like I just walk around and go get the stuff that I need. I mean, maybe we hit, um, what do they call it? Post scarcity. I mean, the world technically could be in post scarcity type of a situation where everybody has what they need if we could figure out how to deliver it. Right? Maybe we're headed there. Maybe crypto's part of that. Maybe crypto's part of IoT. So not post scarcity, but like today where I just go get stuff and go home. And then and everything knows what I'm paying incrementally. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to get to is there's technology that's being developed now. You've probably seen, I think out in San Francisco, you got some of these stores, though I know in some of the places you can't have them, but where you scan to get in, you just get your stuff and walk out. Right. I
Hmm.
mean, and you might even scan yourself out. There's not even, I've been to stores where there aren't even people, running the
Hmm.
place, particularly out, in like big corporate settings. You just walk in, get the stuff, scan it, RFID technology, all of that. Anyways, I can see all that technology coming together, but I don't know how yet. And I'm waiting. And that would be another example of a jump the shark, type of situation.
Yeah, I think that it's a good call out because I think eventually we've identified that the ideal state would be moneyless, right? If we have the appropriate way to exchange energy and trade efficiently, right? We don't actually need money. It's just a mechanism. And in some ways, I feel like crypto pushes that needle forward in terms of people having to now do research about what is money, even because I feel like before I've been, focused on money as a tool to get what I need done, but to actually think about why was money invented and what are the forces that be that contribute to changes in value. I think that it's allowing people to have that financial education and understand really what's going on and start to kind of separate the emotional aspect of it because I feel like money is a very highly charged topic, right? Like we've seen socially, right? Just through the dynamics of having income inequality and how that really pushes the divide, right? So to be able to have this conversation and see what a more equitable and fair world could be if we design it with this new technology, I think that is part of the thought exercise and the experimentation that's happening right now, right? Like these tools, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think people are starting to think about, how are we going to take the next steps forward in terms of building a system that we really want to use instead of what we have already.
Yep. I think you're right on that. I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing. I think I don't know what's going to look like either, but I'm excited for it. And so we bring it all the way back to what we've been talking about, right? I think some of that technology is going to be built into the pulse chain, or in conjunction with the pulse chain. And I think Hex is a foundational piece of that, or can be a foundational piece of whatever comes out of them. Got to bring it all the way back to the Hex top.
I mean, it's good to understand, right? Because there are so many different angles you can take it. But we are basically on unproven ground in a way, right? That we're all
Mhm.
experimenting on the ecosystem actively. So I think it is best to take a positive approach because we all know we're heading in the right direction, even though we're still unsure what that is. I think we're still putting progress and moving forward, which I think is the best that we can be doing.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, one way or another, money's going away. We're penniless now. I don't know. I don't know if you know that, right?
I
Did
noticed
you follow
that.
them?
Rest in
Yeah. So
peace.
yeah. So we're penniless. Soon we'll be Nicholas.
Mhm.
Not Saint Nicholas, guys, but Nicholas. And then we'll be
Is
dimeless. And then
is there
eventually
like
we'll just be
is there a
cashless at some
timeline?
point. Yeah.
Is
I
there a
don't know.
timeline for all those?
I
Oh.
don't know. They've been trying to get rid of pennies for it's 15 years. So you just couldn't get. I don't know who was benefiting from pennies that we couldn't get rid of them, but the fact that people throw them away, should have been a hint that you shouldn't be paying more than a penny for a penny to make one, right? So, I mean, I go pick them up all over the place. Yeah, but you guys in Canada, Mr. Max, you got loonies. Sure, you're good. Um, so we got these have been no more pennies, but now I'm collecting even more. I'm a penny collector, so I got a whole bunch of pennies. But I go, I walk around outside, and I don't know if other people see those. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the streets are paved with gold, but damn, there's a lot of money on the ground all over the place. I pretty much go to any store, and it just shows you how devalued the dollar is. I go to almost any store and find change on the ground. Of course, I can't use it for anything because it's not enough to buy anything, right? But with enough of it. But I do think we're headed into a cashless society at some point, which that'll be that one might be revolutionary when that happens.
Well, I think we're already trending towards it, right? With all of these like mobile payments and NFC,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like you don't even have to pull out your real credit card to do things anymore. It's just tap to
I know
pay,
it's
which is so much
yeah.
cleaner. I don't want to be touching all this money and stuff.
Yeah, and then
So,
you don't even and then it could be a virtual card. See, it's not even your card,
hmm
that you're using. You're using a virtual card that's a virtual representation of your card.
hmm
Kind of crazy. Uh, yeah, we'll definitely be heading there. But you're revolutionary. When I say that, I mean it may be physically revolutionary when we go to cashless, as well as from a technology perspective. Well, I've kept you for over an hour now. Do you have any questions that I think I actually hit the high level questions that you had about Hex that we had kind of arranged in advance? Do you have anything you wanted to ask before we wrap up?
No, I think it was a good breakdown of just state of affairs. I think crypto moves pretty quickly, so it's interesting to be part of it because otherwise, it's hard to catch up unless you're part of the community getting the updates.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. I'm watching a lot of things. I can't watch everything, so I find myself falling behind too. I do. I just think as we wrap up, guys, anybody who's out there listening still, come back and see this later. We know there's pain in the streets. People are feeling bad about things and whatnot. But if you do have something you like and you always wanted some of it, probably buying it at the cheapest price and getting the most units makes the most sense. So, not financial advice, but there's a lot of these tokens. This is what we're saying. Everything doesn't have to be $1 million play overnight. I guess is what I'm saying. It's okay to have little hodl bags of things that you think might be super valuable in the future. Right. So, and that includes Hex. And of course, I'm a big Quattro Cinco staker for Hex, so I like that. I'm big on it. I don't have a lot of big Quattro Cinco stakes. Put a different way, but all right. Well, Kim, it was very nice to meet you. I'm very glad you came on. Thank you, Tam, for putting us together. I do appreciate it. And doing this, and of course, we can always come back and talk more. There's so much we didn't even talk about with Hex. I mean, there's so much. I mean, the opportunities that are out there. The ecosystem that's been built around that. But this was just the beginning start. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody. Well,
Thank you
um,
for having me.
Kim, do you have people? Do you like? Oh yeah, of course, of course. It's very nice to meet you in person. I felt like I already knew you, from the streams. Do you want people to follow you on X? You want to tell people where you're at on X, or
Yeah, definitely. If you think my journey is interesting and would like to see more of my content, definitely follow me on X, or I also have Instagram, TikTok, and active on there too. Different types of content a little bit, but yeah, crypto's been
yeah, so
fun.
let
Thank
me
you so much.
grab your handle and I'll drop it out there for people if you want it. So I have you at Kim underscore PUTER. Is that
That is
correct?
correct. Yes.
So I'll drop that in here. So anybody wants to follow Kim, you can go do that and track down her Instagram and whatnot and check it out. All right, everybody. You guys stay crispy out there. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. This is kind of a different conversation than I normally talking about details and numbers and stuff. So I do appreciate it. And so we'll go to the outro, everybody, and you guys have a good night. Be back maybe tomorrow with T-shirts.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flamin' hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart, win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it! Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.